Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is
CORONACAST.
Hello, it's Monday the 22nd of August, recording on Gadigal land. Charles and Dom here.
Today we've appointed ourselves, in Scott Morrison style, as the hosts of CORONACAST, an ABC podcast all about the coronavirus.
That's right, I'm Dr. Charles Firth.
And I'm health reporter Dominic Taylor. What we do now in the new format of CORONACAST, Charles, is we just do some random banter at the start of the show. It's kind of bizarre.
Well, it's because market research shows that it makes us more relatable and more trustworthy, so that every time we get something egregiously wrong about the coronavirus, we don't actually get roasted in the Australian as much.
Because you're so likeable.
Yeah.
So the last time I listened, Norman Swan was talking about his buttocks and how he'd had some issues with them, and entertaining the amusing notion of a spin-off buttock cast. Charles.
Well, actually, snap, because I've had problems with my buttocks all weekend, Dom.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What's going on? Is it aging?
Oh, I think it's just probably some sort of hideous STI.
Is it your Scottish heritage kicking in?
Might even be monkeypox. Who knows? Yeah, no, it's my Scottish heritage. That's right, which you can hear from my thick
Glaswegian accent.
Glaswegian accent.
Absolutely. All right, I think that's enough random banter.
Yeah.
Should we do a podcast about the novel coronavirus?
Yeah, so I haven't listened to any of those in the last 2.5 years. There needs to be one more.
We could do that, or we could talk about an even greater threat to human. Forget
okay.
COVID. I've got something even bigger after this.
CORONACAST.
That was an ad which you wouldn't have heard if you'd gone to chaser.com.au/podcast and subscribe for $9 a month, by the way. It's working now, the ad-free version. We've actually fixed it, amazingly enough.
What we sell you now get. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing. How are you feeling, Charles? I'm
in a
happy?
great mood.
Really?
So over the weekend, we finished the final layout of the Shot Anthology, which is a book that's coming out in October.
I'd never heard of that. I can't believe you haven't plugged it before.
Yeah, well, it's not on sale yet, so what's the point of plugging? But no, it's and it looks fantastic. It's literally about the last 2.5 years of lockdown and everything like that. But
I'm going to guess there's some articles in there that are not happy with Scott Morrison.
Yeah, I think pretty much every article in there is not happy with Scott Morrison.
So it's like it's the shot brackets at Scott Morrison's head.
Yeah, that's right. But it's such a beautiful reminder of, like, it's a very emotional book because it's a sort of almost like a diary by some of Australia's best writers of what happened during the pandemic.
Well, particularly the Shot's editor, Dave Milner, he just emoted so much on that column. Like, you'd read it. I remember reading it over and over again and just feeling, oh, those poor fuckers in Melbourne. And then when it happened to us, we're both feel like, now it's our turn to be, oh, you don't understand. You just don't understand what it's like. You don't understand what it's like, as you said many times on this podcast. But then they got it as well.
Yeah.
So they had more. Anyway, that's awful. But one way, Charles.
But it's good. I'm in a good mood because it's all laid out. It's going to the printers on
and things are looking
Tuesday.
kind of good. People are cautiously sort of saying COVID may almost be ovary, sort of
petering
petering down. And
things are good. Things are good.
well, Charles, let me throw something else at you that I'm sure will lift your mood, because there's good news and there's bad news in this story. Okay, the Times in London reports a study asking this cheery question for a Monday: which countries would survive a nuclear war? Scientists answer.
Oh, okay. Well, surely Australia would be pretty well off in that regard, wouldn't it? I mean,
that's the good news.
Yes.
The good news is, so who would win in a nuclear war between the US and Russia? I mean, nobody.
Well, no one wins a nuclear
in a macro
war.
sense.
Yeah.
But the countries with the best hope of at least, and I'm quoting here, at least seeing their civilization survive for a decade afterwards are Argentina and Australia.
What about New Zealand?
I don't know if they're worthy of even mentioning.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
So imagine if the only culture that survived
was Australia
and Argentina.
Well, I'll tell you what, Argentina, they got those good grill restaurants.
They
so
do.
It wouldn't be too bad.
We like playing rugby. We could play rugby against each other. They could beat us in soccer.
Yeah.
The only time we ever played any. We'd have to teach them cricket, Charles.
Yeah.
So that they understood our ways.
Well, let's see, because the only thing that I would care about is who remains in cricket. The English would, of course, be wiped out.
Well, in fact, it's not good. But there would be enough for a team. Like, it depends whether you look at the upside or the downside. The downside, according to the Times, is that the study suggests that 90% of Britons would starve to death.
But is that a downside or upside?
Whereas, 60 million, that means there's still 6 million Poms.
Yeah, that's
They
the
just have a
downside.
worse cricket team.
Yeah. Well, although New Zealand's pretty good and they've only got 3 million people. So,
That's true. Well,
yeah.
maybe there'd still be maybe the Ashes would continue. There would
may-
be a lot of Ashes.
Actually, statistically, if you kill somebody in England, you're likely to kill a bad cricketer, aren't you? That's the nature of England. So
Imagine how big the urn would be if you got the ashes of Lords in there after the nuclear firestorm.
Yeah.
So there's that. And the thing is, the scientists went on to try and model exactly what would happen.
I reckon South Africa would survive all right as well. I think it
The
would
Southern
actually,
Hemisphere is a good place
I
to be.
think it would be fine because if we've got Argentina, we teach them cricket. We've got New Zealand, we've got South Africa, Australia.
Still got
That's
decent
enough.
rugby.
Would West Indies would probably be.
Oh, they're on the
pretty
equator. Wouldn't be so good.
irradiated, yeah.
You'd have Thailand. You'd have like Bali.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
what
like-
about India? Is India going to?
India's too far north, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So just to
Yeah.
give you the full horror of this.
Okay. Yeah.
As a cheerful Monday morning story. What will happen when the massive firestorms caused by a large-scale nuclear exchange throws up enough soot to block out the sun, as it were in the Northern Hemisphere?
Oh well, that's good for global warming, though, isn't it?
Wouldn't it be bad? Wouldn't that be another greenhouse?
It would block out the sun, though.
Oh, I suppose that's true.
Yeah,
You'd
like,
have
so-
it'd be like wearing sunblock.
And global warming is just caused by the sun
That's right.
being
Nothing to do
too
with
bright.
humans.
It's nothing to do with human activity.
So basically the stat is, Charles, the key stat here is that even if you avoided being among the initial deaths, the indirect effect of the conflict means that 5 billion people would starve to death immediately after the attack. But not in Australia.
that would be very depressing. That would
It
be
would
a
be.
depressing moment
on
in human
the-
civilization.
But on the bright side, imagine how many gold medals we'd win at the next Olympics. It'd be even better than the Commonwealth
Dom, I
Games.
don't think this is a good topic, but this is going to get you cancelled. I'm not having any part in making jokes about 5 billion people dying because
They're not going to be around to cancel us. No, look, it is absolutely horrifying.
so what would happen? Okay, so that means there's still 2 billion people around. Like,
There's still a few around.
And
a big chunk of Africa gets to survive.
right, yeah, because what I'm thinking is like, who will make our iPhones? Because does China still?
Can you imagine?
exist?
You'd have to get a New
We'd-
Zealander iPhone.
We'd have to, or they'd be made in Australia iPhones. They'd be like 4 times as heavy and wouldn't work.
And
properly.
the software would crash.
We'd get Telecom Australia to make them.
They
or
would run
something.
MS-DOS.
Yeah.
Because no, the key thing is it's whether you grow your own wheat. Do you grow enough nuclear-resistant
right.
crops?
Yes.
We have the wheat.
So that means Gina Reinhardt, because doesn't she own all the wheat fields in Australia? She would
Does she?
become the sort of
The queen.
the richest person in the world. She'd be the Jeff Bezos of
the new
world,
Australia.
of the new world.
And it says it wouldn't all be peaches and cream for Australia. Yes, we'd have enough food to survive and we'd be away from the sort of Northern Hemisphere epicenter of the blast.
Yes.
But every single person who was still alive would be trying to get to Australia to have the wheat.
So actually, the sort of no boat people policy would be very forward thinking.
It would be very hard to enforce. I'm thinking if giant flotillas of millions of people.
Billions of people. Like,
Billions of people.
Billions of people. That is a good election for Peter Dutton to run in, though.
Oh, yes.
I think we would trust him.
That
with
would be the
getting
moment
rid of-
where he would really get a
his
shot.
time to shine.
Can you imagine? Because Scott Morrison had that little dinky little I Stop These.
Yeah.
With a picture of a boat that probably, carried people who were desperately in need.
Desperately fleeing.
And
yeah.
probably got turned around and drowned. Yeah, I Stop These.
Yeah.
Imagine how big Peter Dutton's would be. It'd be a giant warship.
Yeah, because presumably there'd be a lot of literally cruise ships and things like that. And I'll tell you what, Peter Dutton was not very good at stopping the cruise ships from coming in at the beginning
That's
of the
true.
pandemic, was he?
Yeah.
They just let them in. with
And
all-
also, they'd all turn up to the border and say, but we're au pairs for the Dutton family.
Yeah,
Imagine
I know.
there'd be a billion au pairs.
the au pair loophole.
It's extraordinary research. Like, they've looked at all kinds of aspects of this.
Wait, can I just say, this scenario, I mean, I know it's bad, everyone dying and everything, but the idea of presumably a whole lot of brilliant people from all around the world suddenly coming to Australia, it's not necessarily a bad scenario, is it? We've become like the New York of the world.
I mean, if
you
we
know.
improved our attitudes to migrants, we might.
Yeah. Well, I think we'd have to, by necessity, wouldn't we? We'd have to just sort of go, especially if there's nowhere else in the world for them to go, and we've got all this wheat.
Well, you know where
You
they
just
could
have
go.
to go, where?
They could go to Billawheeler. It would be the largest city in the world.
That's right.
I know, but this is the crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
Here's a moral dilemma for you, Charles. I want you to weigh in on this one, right?
Okay.
They've figured out, so they've looked at so many aspects of what would happen with this global nuclear war. So it's actually about the hunger. It's not. I thought that the scariest thing about the nuclear war would have been being blown up or getting radiation poisoning, but apparently it's actually the starvation.
Right.
So what they've figured out is that we could stave a lot of it off if we cultivated mushrooms, seaweed, other algae. So if you ate seaweed and mushrooms for a year, you can still do that in low light.
Yeah, right, because fungi doesn't really need any light to grow, does it?
So if you do that and you build greenhouses very quickly,
Yes.
not the greenhouse effect, which would be, but if you actually build greenhouses and cultivate all this stuff,
Yes.
then you could
survive
keep a
the
lot of
nuclear
people
winter. Survive the nuclear winter.
Yeah.
Because I've often also thought, wouldn't you just eat each other? Like as you died,
They haven't modelled that, Charles. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
But wouldn't the other people be
they'd be
toxic
rotting.
and
They'd rot.
rotting on the inside?
Yeah.
Well, here's
You'd
the
have to
moral
cook-
dilemma, though,
Cook
Charles.
them well.
I mean, that you found another moral dilemma. Would we eat each other?
Yeah.
And that said, I mean, we've got to make sure we keep having interns at the Chaser.
Yes, exactly.
Very important.
Yes.
And then Lachlan needs to fatten up a bit, I think. Our producer.
CORONACAST.
So here's your moral dilemma, Charles.
Okay.
Right? So they're saying we should consider just making these investments now and say, well, we want to be able to have a food source that survives a nuclear winter so that 5 billion people don't starve. I mean, that sounds like it's worth
Yes.
preparing for, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
Except
Yeah.
the problem that the scientists say is that if you did that,
Yeah.
then we'd be more likely to fire nuclear weapons.
Oh,
'Cause
yes.
you'd be like, well, it's not going to exterminate everybody. You'll just get it won't be 1 billion.
Surely what should happen is Australia, like if Australia's going to survive, and, you know, Argentina, if they want to, should start developing, you know, mushroom growing facilities and seaweed harvesting facilities now, but not tell anyone.
Secret seaweed stash.
Secret stash just in case. Then, if we do find a couple of billion people at our doorstep, we can say, welcome in. Here, we've got some mushrooms for you.
That's such a lovely, inclusive model of a future
Look,
Australia
I know
with a
that
billion people living in it.
You were trying to sort of ruin everyone's Monday, weren't you?
I was.
Yeah. And yet, this has turned into the feel-good story of the year.
Yes, the majority of people have died in a horrible
that.
fashion.
Yeah, yeah.
But in Australia, no one's going to beat us for gold medals at the Olympics,
No, no.
which is ultimately the most important metric.
You know what the worst thing about a global nuclear winter would be, though?
What?
Is just how the Melburnians would find a way to complain about it, wouldn't they?
Well, they'd also be very well prepared. I mean, if
Yes.
presuming that the sunlight got blocked out here in
Yeah.
Australia and things were done, they'd have the right wardrobe.
And they'd be, you know, like presumably you have to stay indoors to get away from all the fallout.
And that their
And it'd be
bars
like-
are already set up for
Yeah,
it.
it's all, you know, oh yeah, another lockdown.
That's fine.
Don't mind if I do.
We've got craft beers down in this
Yeah.
in this dank cellar.
I'll write some angsty essays about it and publish it in a couple of years.
I feel sad for other people.
Yeah,
Well,
I
that
feel
part of me
sad for-
isn't totally dead yet.
The Northern Hemisphere. But let's face it, the Northern Hemisphere has said it too good for too long.
It's had its day.
Yes. It's time for us to shine. It's time for the Southern Hemisphere to shine.
And we don't have nuclear weapons. Argentina doesn't have nuclear weapons.
No.
I mean, they broke it, they fix it, right?
Yeah.
Northern
South Africa
Hemisphere.
used to have nuclear weapons. They're the only country in the world that has voluntarily given up all its nuclear weapons.
Did they?
Yeah. They had it under apartheid. They developed a whole stash of nuclear weapons. And when Nelson Mandela came in, they decommissioned them all.
That's really inspiring. I mean, Nelson Mandela would be such a great model of how to lead humanity out of this terrifying scenario.
Yeah, yeah.
But we don't have him anymore.
No, he's dead. Just like everyone else is going to be. This is horrible. This is really horrible.
I'm just wondering what doing this sort of science would do to you. Because the annoying thing would be, if this actually happens, forecasts like this never work
No,
out.
and also in the movies, what would happen is the annoying scientists who's modelled all this would then not be listened to.
Yeah.
They'd be keep on running towards, you know, like the White House or whatever, going, I've got the papers that will save the world.
And they'd be played by Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, and it'd be like, Shut up, scientists.
Shut up, egghead.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though. The pandemic does make you realise how accurate those movies actually are. Shut up, scientists. We're not going to listen to you. We've got nukes on our hands.
This makes me think we do need people who actually plan these things away from the public eye. Like, I do believe in democracy, right?
Yes.
But if you said to the average Australian, or particularly the average American, look, you're going to survive as long as you can live on mushrooms and seaweed, a lot of them are just going to go, no. I don't want to plan for that. My vote is to just die. In that scenario, if you can't even give me potatoes and chips.
Yeah, although if you give them shrooms,
that's true. It depends exactly what kind of mushrooms you're growing.
I'll tell you, like they do actually do this scenario planning all the time. Like I know people who work in the New South Wales government, and the New South Wales government does war game planning. Every 6 months, emergency services.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do, and I bet none of those plans covered the scenario of John Barilaro destroying the New South Wales government.
But what is really interesting about those scenario planning is, so they'll do one. They did one a few years ago, and the scenario was that terrorists blew up the Harbour Bridge, and it was sort of the whole war game apparently ended in a bit of a disaster. The ministers didn't quite know what to do, and it was all a bit of a sort of.
It wouldn't inconvenience me if I couldn't get to the North Shore.
But one of the things that they worked out during that day was that actually, or one of the people who gamed the scenario had worked out is that it only requires 4 very small suitcase bombs to actually completely destroy the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which is why then straight after that game they started putting security guards up on the bridge, because actually it's structurally not particularly good if you just strategically put a few little suitcase bombs on it. So that's why we now have those security guards.
I've seen those security guards.
Yeah.
What makes you think they're able to resist a suitcase bomb?
I don't know. Yeah, I know, yeah. Well, no, presumably because they assumed that, I don't know. Yeah, no, you're right, yeah. It's stupid. But at least they've got jobs now. It's job creation. It's good. Can we finish yet? Or?
I just wanted to keep going till you got properly depressed.
Oh, you want me to be depressed, do you?
Well, you were just so happy.
Nothing about this conversation has made me depressed. Look, frankly, all my most successful friends live overseas, either in America or England or Europe or whatever. They all, frankly, are much more successful than me. They're happier. They've got these amazing families that are often much wealthier than me. Nothing would give me greater pleasure than to be able to ring them up and go, "Oh, you got a nuclear winter. Sorry, I've just got a mouthful of mushrooms.
We'll just send you a packet of seaweed in the post.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with the boat ride out here."
Our gear is from Road. We're part of the Acast Creator Network.
And do let us know what other podcasts we should swear ourselves in as for the rest of the week, because, it's CORONACAST today. I think we should keep doing this all week.